Hey, it's Courtney Barriger, your host of Environmental Style Now, the A to Z podcast on all that is sustainable fashion. On this episode of ES Now, I have the pleasure of talking with Laura Hartley, a coach and activist for changemakers and wayfinders, here to discuss how to find your purpose and make change in the fashion industry. Hello, I'm Courtney Barriger, and this is ES Now. If you're a changemaker, activist, or looking to remake the world, this episode is for you. My guest today, Laura Hartley, specializes in cultivating leadership, healing burnout, and doing the inner work of dismantling capitalism and supremacy culture. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
In terms of coaching, I grew up around coaching. So it was something that I was exposed to from a very young age. My mother was a life coach. She actually ran one of the very earliest schools in Australia that trained life coaches. So some of my earliest memories are, I hated it at the time, but being 7 years old, and I was in the car and listening to Neil Donald Walsh or Wayne Dyer or Tony Robbins or Dennis Waitley or any of these personal development thinkers for the last 50 years. And it had an influence on who I am today. So I was obviously very interested in the coaching world from a young age. I think it teaches us really powerful questions that give us insight, but I also saw that it lacked, as a whole, not completely, but sometimes some of the teachings in that world lack nuance. They lack their relationality to the climate crisis, to the world that we live in today. And so what I do now is I work with changemakers and activists, and I really try to bridge these two worlds of outer change, the work that we need to be doing for system change in the world, with inner transformation. And where is the space that we need to be in to create a better world?
That's absolutely beautiful. When you work with your clients and changemakers, it's just such a strong category to choose as well. What are some of the first things that you start with when you take on a new client?
So I think that really depends what I'm working with them on. So really a lot of my work now centers around getting free from internalized capitalism and patriarchy. So, these things show up in a million ways, particularly perfectionism, burnout, feeling like never quite doing enough or never quite good enough. These are all internalized systems that we kind of have in our psyches. So that's one area. And then we start to work on getting power and finding what's ours to do in this time. So, when I say change makers, I work with anyone who wants to make a difference in the world. Sometimes they're in nonprofits, sometimes they're frontline activists, sometimes they're social entrepreneurs, but anybody who is working for that. And all of us, no matter what we are doing to kind of remake the world, usually are kind of struggling with these same areas where we're looking at, I feel a bit powerless in this space. I don't really know how to do this anymore, how to influence this really stagnant old patriarchal hierarchy that, this organization has. Or I feel like I am constantly burnt out, that no matter how much I do, it's never quite enough. And all of these have the same roots to them. So we're really looking to kind of bring it back to the root, explore how it's showing up in clients' lives, and help them to get free so they're happier and also they can create better impact.
The system it's now, centuries and centuries old and almost just impossible. I feel like I feel the same way, every day as a woman, why am I trying to act like a man in this world because it is a patriarchy and I'm trying to make a difference. So what are some things that you've learned along the way of how the system is actually designed to work against us?
Oh gosh, it is designed to work. The system is designed to uphold the system as it is. That's what it's about. It's not so much just designed to work against us, but the system is built to protect a certain power structure, and it's built to keep that power structure in place. And so anything, that kind of aims to subvert it or disrupt it, it's very good, particularly if you're looking at capitalism here. Like capitalism is very good at folding into it any sort of system that aims to disrupt it. It did it with feminism, it's done it with self-help, it's done it with spirituality. Anything that could actually really challenge capitalism, it folds into it. And then you get things like, degrees, not all, but parts of the wellness movement, and the kind of some forms of feminism that aren't quite right either. So it's not that it's against us, but it is wanting to self-perpetuate. And that's what we're really looking at, when we're talking about, getting free and this inner work of system change. We're looking at, well, what are the mindsets, the beliefs, the values, the attitudes that are upholding the system? How are they playing out in my psyche? And how can I start to challenge them? Because I think it's only when enough of us have started to challenge that the system as a whole can really transform. Otherwise, we're all too attached to it as it is.
Yeah, when I think about it, it's one of the reasons why I can guess a lot of change makers hesitate to even start, because the system of capitalism in particular, I feel like a lot of people feel guilty to be accepting of currency and money, even though that is what you need to even make a difference. How do you, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love that actually. And there's probably like two answers to that question. I'll answer the first bit first, which is that I don't think you need money to make a difference. I think that is something that I hear a lot, that, well, we need money to buy power in order to, change our petitions and our elections, and buying our way to power isn't transforming the system. That is just buying our way to power. It's tweaking the levers. It's kind of working at the edges. It's still working in the system as it is. So if we're looking at, well, actually, do I need money to make change? I disagree. No, because there's so many forms of nonviolent protest and civil disobedience and many beautiful artistic areas that we can explore as well. But at the same time, to kind of answer that first question, I think you're right. We equate money and capitalism to be the same thing, and they're not. Money predates capitalism. Capitalism's only 500 years old or so. And there are so many ways that we can look at money as a resource that has wonderful benefits, that it's not, my having something doesn't mean that somebody else does not. When we're talking about billionaires, different story. That level of inequality is unjust and, a big problem in the world. But for most of us, we're not talking on that level. So us living flourishing lives, thriving lives, having money that allows us to do that isn't at odds with trying to disrupt the essence of capitalism.
How would you say that capitalism plays into the movement of sustainable fashion, where there are so many fronts that, I mean, we can even just talk about climate crisis in general, but there are so many fronts that you can move forward to make a difference. But I just feel like, again, the money part, like where the money is going, is what is ruining everything.
Look, money's a tool, and money is a tool that is used it's used for power. It's not power in and of itself, but it is a tool with which power is wielded. And I think that's the kind of what we see here, whether we see that in politics, whether we see that in fashion, we see, well, of course, if you have money, we can also use it as a tool to wield power. So there's nothing wrong with having it and wielding it for good. But when we see that as our only option to make change, that we need to get that particular tool that somebody else is using in order to use it in the same way as them, but just kind of, reverse, then that's really limiting in our scope of imagination, in our scope of creating change. So absolutely, we need to look at where the money is going, how it's being used, how can we influence that, how can we use the resource and tool that we have, the money that we have, in a different direction, which always comes with an element of privilege, because I'm fortunate to have the money that I can spend in that way, but not everybody does. Mm-hmm. But also then widening our imagination to go, okay, well, if this is just a power tool and this is how they're using it, what is the power system protecting? What is the power dynamic at play here? What other ways do I fall into this power structure, or am I participating in it? And how can I start to kind of widen the scope of imagination in challenging it? I think that gives us a bit more to work with.
You know, in speaking of the system, like for example, there are in America, I mean, so many subsidies for oil, right? As compared to subsidies for organic farming.
Australia
So
too.
yeah, and so polyester is just going to win out. I mean, the government itself is protecting, the system itself is protecting the wrong. I mean, I can say it's wrong, but the climate negative products. So how can we, what can we do about that on either a personal level, actually both levels, personal, and then what can we do to basically like get our governments, the actual like governing bodies, to take this seriously?
I love this question. And, I feel that kind of shared pain, that in Australia, the amount of money we give out in fossil fuel subsidies to coal and gas companies every minute compared to what we're actually investing in is completely outrageous. And I think there's I love this two questions here because there are two answers. The first is I do talk about self-work as world work, which means when I'm talking about getting free of a system in our mindset, in our attitudes, in our values, in our beliefs, it is not just this, oh, it's nice to have, and isn't it great? We have the luxury to work on ourselves and it's going to help me stay with this long haul work. It's not just about that. It is about actually challenging the root of the system, because you kind of mentioned it before. These systems predate us. They predate everybody alive, right? So every generation here today has been born into this. And it is almost like it's like a virus of the mind, which passes down generation to generation with the sole aim of operating in the background, unconscious, but self-perpetuating itself. And so when we can look at the ways that we have internalized capitalism, and that really means the equation of, say, our worth with our productivity, and that's when we start glorifying everything from like overworking to going into work when we're sick, or feeling that sense of time scarcity, that there's never enough time. This is internalized capitalism. This is important that we do the work of getting free of that we do the work of healing that in our minds, in our bodies, in our hearts, because that is an essence of transformation. That is how we disrupt the system from within. Wow. But then, yeah, and then the other part of the question, I think comes down to our resources and who we are. If we have financial resources, if we own a company, if we work in this industry, let's lobby for change. Let's be the example that we want to see. Let's invest in in the solutions that we need, because there are plenty of people doing innovative things in the world. But if we don't have that, then let's look at the plenty of activist groups that are out there that are looking. No, I'm not a big fan of petitions per se. I think petitions worked 30, 40 years ago. I don't think they really work now, but there are plenty of wonderful groups from, Extinction Rebellion to Just Stop Oil to the Sunrise Movement, who do creative, beautiful actions that help inspire us and challenge us and really disrupt business as usual. So I would say check out one of those areas if that's something that we want to be doing to create change at the kind of policy or government level.
So imagining it, someone's life who decides, okay, I want to be a change maker for the fashion industry. However, I have a 9-to-5 job, so I'm in the system and I don't have a lot of resources, so I can't just switch jobs and all of a sudden become a business owner tomorrow. So what would their options be if the scarcity of time is a little bit more real? If like you end up only having an hour of chill and you would rather watch Ted Lasso or something.
First, we're all in the system. I think it's Kelly Deals who says we're all in the water, so we're all wet. And I think that's important to remember. There's no escaping the system. I wish there was, but unless like we want to go live like off grid on some totally self-sustainable thing, and even then I think it's questionable. In today's age, we are all part of it, but that's actually a good thing because it means we're all co-creating it. We're all participating in it. And so the more of us who are participating in it and co-creating it, the more we have to actually change it with our actions. And if we're in a business 9-to-5 and we're wanting to start something, I've been there. It's tiring. Like, I'm going to be very real. The time scarcity thing is kind of real. There are structural things at play. Add in, let's say, you have a child or you have a family or you're a caregiver for someone and you have even less time. There are structural realities to our time. But the time scarcity I was referring to is really that sense of, how we're kind of like, oh, thank God it's Friday. Or how was your weekend? Oh, it's good, but it wasn't really long enough. So like this perceived sense that, oh, we've got so much to fit in today. We're just going to rush and like make it like we're going to go really fast. We're going to work through lunch. Like this perceived sense as time is something that we can waste.
End of quarter, we got to reach these goals. Oh my gosh, we haven't done it yet. Yeah.
All the panic. But I would say to somebody who's in that position, like that time scarcity that you're feeling in a sense of it has to happen now probably isn't real. I would say use that hour that you've got. Like lay the groundwork in yourself, get clear on what it is that you want to create, what your mission is, what your values are, what the business structure is, what would it look like, and then start. And that's the time that it takes to be doing a 9 to 5 and then to be doing this on the side while you're kind of building this up to take over. But it's work that is meaningful, and it's kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Probably like an avalanche. I think it starts small, but it does build over time.
Have you, in your experience, just kind of watching the way that like the mindfulness of the world has been changing? Because it has been changing a lot, especially with Gen Z. This is a funny question, but like, do you predict that there is going to be like a major shift in our system coming soon with like millennials coming of age? Okay, we're all kind of pissed off and not happy because we entered, our age, we grew up in a recession and then we got hit with another, and then COVID, we're kind of like, yo, this is my prime time, but I can't do very much. Do you feel like there's a hope that the system could actually potentially change over?
I think absolutely. I mean, one, I actually think we're living in the collapse of the system now, like particularly when you're looking at capitalism. Like we really are seeing kind of late stage capitalism, but that thing is just going to keep going for like with its death throes for like as long as it can. But yeah, everything changes. We have this idea that these things are so big that they can never come down, but everything in history has taught us that they do. Every bit of it, like if you look all throughout time, everything changes. Every system that we thought was too big to fail eventually fails. So my question then is, what are the seeds that we're planting now, in our communities, in our economy, our local economies, in our lives that are kind of building the new? I think when we're looking to make change, there's kind of 3 major areas we can work. We can work at disruption, which is what activists are very good at like shining a light to injustice. We can work at like helping people, so like conservationists and medical workers as their aid sphere. Or there's building, and that's building the systems that are actually going to stand when what is here is crumbling. And that's a really important role. So I think for anybody who's wanting to start a business or anybody who's wanting to create more sustainable fashion, which, gosh knows we need, that is a building role that is absolutely going to grow and be important as time goes on. I wish I could say there's going to be like one moment of collapse or, it's going to be a revolution next year. I don't think that's true. I think the world moves in slow, incremental ways, but absolutely, the system will change and it will collapse at some point.
Possibly in our lifetime. I mean, just 3 banks just failed in the last month, and everyone I know is getting laid off, but I'm like, okay, something is happening.
Yeah, and like you only need to look at the reality of the climate crisis and the degrees of warming that we're kind of locked in for and still heading towards, and how we still don't change at that collective level to know that, well, major disruption is going to come, particularly over the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And so what are we preparing for? What are we creating? And what are we kind of planting seeds for to really happen over that time to take its place? And I think that's a beautiful question.
I grew up in Florida, and the last few storms that came through, Ian, and then I think the other one was Michael a few years ago, wiped out, just annihilated whole communities that I know and grew up with. But what's interesting is, as a red state, usually it's a bit of a swing state, people are waking up. And I've seen so much change there in Florida, and particularly with sustainable fashion. Everyone I talk to they're so excited, and it's so. And living in California and in Florida, to hear the different ways everyone explains it, it's
two different worlds.
Two different worlds. But I think we're all kind of coming slowly to the same conclusion that the climate crisis is real, and we actually need to do something about it. How could individuals right now, what are some small changes that they could make in their internal world? If we're talking about like self-help, okay, what are some internal like mantras or practices that they could do to start shifting over to a more mindful way of consuming, so we can shift a little bit and a little bit out of consumerism and shift a little bit and a little bit toward climate saving practices?
Oh my gosh, I love this. And like, there's so many things that are coming to mind. So I'm just like, gonna have to like narrow it down, which I hate to do. So, I think, coming back firstly, and I'll kind of go in three places here, but I think firstly to what I was talking about before, to this sense of internalized capitalism, understanding it, how it shows up, and challenging it is really important. And we challenge it by, looking at our shoulds at every time where it's the very unsexy work of like our everyday decisions of going, why am I doing this? Like, why did I say yes to this? What is this part of me that feels like it's just never enough, doesn't know what satiety is anymore? And like, anybody here is working with diet culture, like it's the same principle. What is enough? What feels good? That's the same principle that we want for handling internalized capitalism and getting free. Which means, this kind of second point of learning to orient our lives around pleasure. So many of us we organize everything in our lives around pain or avoiding pain. And it's that fear of I'm not enough, it's not enough, I need to do something because I'm so bored or I'm not happy or whatever it is. So we go shopping or we buy something or we're doing something that's just kind of filling the void. So instead we want to act what actually feels good, what fills you up. We have this idea sometimes that to be good climate activists, that we need to like use nothing, like have no impact, this really like threadbare, super boring life. And I don't think that's true. I think the more of us who are fulfilled, the more of us who are happy, the more of us who experience joy and creativity and who are in love with their lives, then the more of us who are going to want to protect the world, the more of us who are going to want to be part of sustainable and mindful decisions. And the last thing I would say is, really find what is yours to do in this time. Because I think every single one of us has a calling. Every single one of us has something we're supposed to be working on. And it is usually either something that breaks our heart, something that tears us open, or it is something that we love and something that we get so much joy out of and we can't stop thinking about. So find what is yours and commit to that. Commit your life and the various aspects of it to thinking about, well, how could I reimagine this? How could I change this? And take those first steps. It won't always be clear how, but just finding that very first step can kind of set you on the path that you need to be on.
That's so beautiful. I remember a moment in my life when I changed, and I think it sounds so simple, but I literally made a list of the people that I thought were the happiest people that I knew personally. Like, who are the happiest people that I know? And like 3 people came to mind, and I put them at the top of the list, and I was like, I'm hanging out with them. I'm going to study them. I'm going to ask them questions. I'm going to figure out how to get happy again. And then I made a whole list for myself of like, what just makes me happy. And I feel like that's some, just simple, silly thing, but I felt like it's actually saved my life.
No, I love that because, I actually think we completely underrate happiness as a transformative tool. But the more of us who are happy, like the more energy we have to do projects that we love, the more involved we are in our communities. To me, it's not really surprising that the rate of loneliness, the rate of depression, or the rate of burnout we see in the world coincides with a world that is increasingly dysfunctional. So the more that we can commit to our own personal joy and meaning and well-being, the more we have to not only enjoy our lives, but to show up for the world. So absolutely.
I read a very funny headline the other day relating to America, and it was, I think it was the New York Times, and it was, America is depressed.
I love it. Yes.
And I don't have a subscription, so I didn't read the article, but I was like, oh, I think they're right.
Yeah, but yeah, I think the world is kind of depressed. I think we are so locked into this idea that there is only one way to be human, that there is only one way the world works. And the amount of apathy that we kind of hear of, but it's not going to do anything. I can't change anything, or, my actions don't matter, or the world is just the way the world is. You can't do anything about it. Just accept it. Is so apathetic. And all of those beliefs, again, are built in to protect the power structures. They're built in to protect what is. And so the more of us,
infuriating.
yeah, right? And it's the same in our own lives. How many of us say that we can't really have what we want? You just kind of got to get by. And so when we can challenge that, the more that we start to thrive and flourish individually, the more we start to feel good, the more naturally we can start to translate that into our communities and into kind of our micro scales, and then into our countries and our world. And I think that's really important.
Oh, it kind of reminds me of like a battered housewife who just stays with her abuser because it's familiar and she knows it. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I feel we're dealing with our world systems at this point.
Yeah, change is not comfortable. And this is the thing, right? If we're like any of this work, so I work a lot with people who've experienced burnout, and I talk a lot because I try not to focus my work just around burnout as a whole, but also, well, how do we actually thrive? Not just how do we just get by and get out of burnout, how do we thrive? How do we feel good? And most of the time that means making decisions that are actually deeply uncomfortable. Like, you think they'd yeah, it's supposed to make us feel great and it's supposed to be like so easy, but no, it actually means like setting boundaries, or, making some choices that scare us and facing that anxiety, facing the kind of sharp pain instead of that kind of dull ache. And that's kind of what we're in the world, right? It's kind of hard for the world to be like, yeah, let's brace the sharp pain of like degrowth and dismantling our systems. Like, no, let's just go with this slow, dull burn to the end.
It feels like a breakup, honestly, because that's the hardest. I feel like when you're trying to make a change in your life, it's the people that you're hanging out with. You have to like, oh, wait a second, sorry, we're breaking up. This friendship is over. But like, it's so hard and so painful. But that's sort of like what you need to do.
Yes. Oh my God. I actually, yes. And then especially when you're broken up and you keep thinking and you're like not happy and it was the right decision, but you're miserable. And so you question it. And it's like, yeah, that's what we need to go through. We need to just embrace that sharp pain, the heartbreak of saying goodbye to the world as it is, and actually moving towards something else.
It's going to be hard, guys. It's going to be hard, but it's going to be beautiful on the other side.
It is. It's going to be so beautiful. And it holds so much possibility. Like, there are infinite possibilities of what we could create. And so if we let ourselves sit with that and remember that and play with that, I think it can kind of remind us and inspire us to keep coming back to something that's better than what is.
I'm thinking about for fashion in particular, there's a lot that goes into that, because for some people it is a band-aid. So it's one of those things that is like, there's the impulse buy, there's it makes you feel better, a quick little dopamine hit, like, oh, this red dress, okay, so great now. How can consumers in particular like refashion the way that they work with the clothing that they buy, and in a way that could help with dismantling the system? That's a really hard question, I know.
I think it's really interesting. I think you come back to that very first point you mentioned there about like the dopamine hit, right? That we all want. Like, I'm that Instagram app. Oh my God, like keep me away from it. But there's all these things that we all have that we're like, yeah, we're so wired for it. But the only way to kind of challenge it is to start to question, why are we needing that dopamine hit right now? Like when I'm looking at that red dress, why do I feel like I need this? And there's probably going to be a few things that could be going on in like the surface level of our mind, which are like, you deserve it. It's been a tough week, or it just looks so fabulous on you, or whatever it might be. And you know what? For some of those answers, absolutely great. Enjoy your red dress. Like, yes. But there's also that deeper question of, is this actually serving me? And is this serving the planet? And is this in alignment with my values? Because, our values we often see them as something that's very passive. We see them as nouns, like I'm a compassionate person, or I want to be a brave person, or whatever it is. But what would that actually look like in your thoughts, your words, your actions? If you want to be part of healing the climate crisis, if you want to be part of sustainable fashion, is this decision actually in alignment with my values right now? And sometimes, even though you really want something, it's not going to be in alignment with your values. And ultimately, as much as that sucks, and I will say it sucks, values give us a much deeper place to work from. They give us much more fulfillment. They give us much more long-term happiness. They give us a greater sense of authenticity and alignment. And so for anybody who's kind of going through that, I'd say look at these two things. Like, look at why you want it. Where's the dopamine fix coming from? Because it's not really going to be fixed with the red dress. And then two, what are your values here? And do you want to live your values? Because that is how we vision the world, and that's how we seed it. When I talk about seeding, it's living your values in your thoughts, your words, and your actions.
How about designers? Let's talk about designers and people that work in the industry.
This comes back to values, really. Like this comes back to, well, actually, what are your values, and are you really living it as a company? And if you're not, then you're also not part of the future, and you need to realize that, because the future is increasingly more and more values aligned. You see that with Gen Z, you see that with millennials, and it's certainly only going to grow as the world becomes kind of more and more a little bit, dysfunctional. So is this material, is this design, is the way that you're making this, the labor of it, actually aligned with your values? Is it aligned with a more just world? Or is that just a marketing slogan that you're using? And the only way that business can be activism, and I really do believe that business can be activism and should be activism, is if it's living its values in its, not just in its marketing, but in its systems, in its operations, in its structures, so that it's really embedding them at each and every level. So that is my main advice to designers, is get creative. Like, if you think it can't be done, find a way. We have put man on the moon. We are an incredible species. We can do anything. Like, look at what we've created all around us. Like, we can. It just needs investment, and it needs time, and it needs creativity. So commit to your values and really look to create those structures that we want to see.
That's super beautiful. Are there any brands that you particularly love that are sustainable?
I'm actually not going to commit there. I love certain brands, but I am not certain of their level of sustainability, and so I don't purchase them too much. So you know what? I want people to hit me up with great sustainable fashion brands, because I'm looking for some, especially because I am plus size, I have hips, on my bottom half. I so struggle to find nice pants, and especially ones that are sustainable. So please send me some, people, and that would be wonderful.
Hey, I've got lists, so I can send you a list too.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, is there anything else that you'd like to share?
I think what I want to share is, just coming back to this idea that the time is now. We don't have the luxury anymore, as much as they talk about time scarcity, but there is a reality that we don't have the luxury of standing on the sidelines anymore or waiting for somebody else to do the work. It is up to us. And it takes work and practice every day to show up. It's okay to have time off. It's okay to take a break. But ultimately, we need to keep returning to this work of creating more sustainable, more regenerative, more eco-friendly fashions in a more eco-friendly world. And so whatever it is that speaks to you, find it, find your path, and start, because the time is now.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful. If someone wanted to find you and hire you for your services, how could they find you?
Iris, yes. So I work with people one-to-one through coaching, and I also have group programs that are running fairly regularly. My website is laurahartley.com. I'm also pretty active on Instagram at laura.h.hartley and also on LinkedIn if that's your kind of space.
Super, super. Well, it was awesome talking with you.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be on.
Yeah, and I will be in touch and send you over everything as soon as I have it done. I think this will be a June. It'll be for June. So
amazing. Sounds great. And I would love those sustainable fashion brands. Wherever I can find them, please send me through.
Yeah. I have a crazy list. I have to find it. Like I plugged it in like years ago. I think there's something like 80 brands, and I broke them up into categories too. So
okay.
yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. Let me check on that.
Thank you.
Cool.
Have a lovely afternoon. Are you in Mexico? Did I see you on Instagram?
Yeah. I'm in Mexico.
Whereabouts?
Just outside of Tulum, so like 15 minutes, but into the jungle. I wanted to be in the trees. I wanted to be around the animals. Plus, there's a ton of seaweed out at the beach right now, so it's not as sexy.
Yeah, beautiful though. Like I was there just earlier in the year actually, and I love Mexico and I love that region. So enjoy. I'm quite jealous because I'm in Toronto and it's not that great here. So.
Oh my gosh. Didn't it just snow? It just snowed there, didn't it?
A few days ago it was very light, but like it's all over the place. Like it went honestly, like 2 weeks ago it was like 25 degrees, and then it dropped back down, and a few days later it was snowing, and I was just like, what the? So, that's okay. It is what it is. But enjoy your time in Mexico, and thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it, and it's good to meet you.
Yeah, no, it's great to meet you too. I'm gonna add you on all the handles and everything, and I'll be in touch.
Awesome.
Congratulations on your cool with what you do. I think it's awesome. Your coaching.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that, and you as well.
Thank you.
No worries.
All right.
Have a good day, and I'll speak to you soon.
Alrighty. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
A huge thank you to Laura Hartley. You can book with her directly for guidance in cultivating a greater purpose personally and professionally at her website, www.laurahartley.com. That's LauraHartley.com. And also you can follow her on Instagram, and that's at laura.h.hartley. Thank you for listening, and that's a wrap.
Hello, this is Walter from Arizona. ES Now is a Holding Corp production. It is written and directed by Courtney Barriger, with music by Perker Ainsworth, and a special thank you to Alexandra Shuck.